In 2184, Earth didn't fall to war, it surrendered to wonder. They arrived without ships that roared or weapons that gleamed. No ultimatums. No warnings. Just a single word broadcast in every language. Observe. Humanity watched, breath held, as they descended, Virelians. Not monsters. Not angels. Something between. They shimmered with elegance, intelligence, and something far more dangerous. Clarity. Among them was Olevera, and when Julius saw her for the first time, he didn't think of danger or diplomacy. He didn't think at all. Her skin, a soft violet that pulsed with bioluminescence. Hair like green fire. Eyes that didn't just see you, they sorted you file by file, layer by layer. She said nothing. She didn't need to, because in that moment, as she stared across the landing bay, one truth wrapped itself around Julius like gravity. This alien wasn't here to fight. She was here to test something far more fragile, his control. And when she finally spoke, her words didn't land like sound. They cut like purpose. You're confused, human. Is it because you're thinking about what's between my legs? He didn't answer. He couldn't, because she already knew. Open book introduction. 600 words. The first interaction. Julius wasn't selected for his diplomacy. He wasn't trained for negotiations, cultural blending, or psychological warfare. He was a systems analyst, reassigned by a shaky government to serve as a cultural bridge. What that meant, no one really knew. Except now, standing inside docking bay 09, he understood exactly why he'd been chosen. Because he was already breaking. Olevera moved with quiet precision. Not like she was floating. More like gravity respected her more than it respected others. The synthetic air inside the station was always dry and metallic. But when she entered, it smelled of rain, of ozone, of unfamiliar comfort. Her clothing confused him the most. Not armor, not ceremonial, not uniform. A deep purple top hung from her shoulders, loose but deliberate, dipping just enough to betray her shape. It exposed nothing obscene, but revealed everything the imagination could finish. Her figure was undeniable, yet nothing about her posture was sexual. It was intentional elegance. She stopped exactly 2 meters from him, no more, no less. He had read about Virelians being hyper-precise in distance and language. Yet somehow, her silence felt louder than her approach. "Julius," she said. Her voice was neither cold nor warm. It simply existed like a law of nature. He nodded. "You already know my name. I know your record, your physiological composition, your reaction time to visual stimuli. That's comforting," he muttered. She tilted her head. "Your heart rate increased when I entered. Now it's slowing. That's unusual." He tried to look away. Failed. There was something predatory in her awareness. Not like a beast waiting to strike, but like a surgeon about to cut, already knowing where it will hurt. "You're observing me," he said, folding his arms. "No, I'm verifying a hypothesis." "Which is?" She didn't blink. "That human arousal disrupts logic circuits in real time." Julius froze. No context. No lead-up. Just truth, flung at him like data. He took a breath. "You think I'm aroused? I think you're trying not to be. Which is worse." He smirked, half out of defense. "Is that what this is about? Testing human self-control?" "No," she said. "It's about understanding why you break before you even touch." The air between them thickened. Not hot, not humid. Loaded. She stepped half a pace closer. Not enough to invade, but enough to be felt. "You've studied humans, haven't you?" he asked. "I've watched you destroy yourselves over instinct. Deny truth in favor of comfort. Lust masked as diplomacy. Violence masked as passion. You fear what you want." "And what do you want?" he asked, unsure if he meant the words. She blinked slowly. "To understand how something as soft as your species survives in a universe this cruel." The words sat between them like a challenge. Julius wanted to turn away, to retreat behind professionalism, duty, uniform. But none of that existed now. Only him. Only her. And one final sentence that neither could unsay. "Human, your confusion betrays you. You're not here to study me. You're trying to survive me. He said nothing, but his silence said everything. Julius had read every psychological briefing Earth had on Virilians, and none of it helped. There were paragraphs about nonverbal dominance, charts comparing Virilian beauty standards to human biology, warnings about emotional cross-contamination. But all the text in the world couldn't explain what was happening in his chest whenever she stood close. Olevera wasn't trying to seduce him. That would have been simple, predictable, human. She was testing him, dissecting him, watching not how he looked at her, but how he hesitated to look away. And the more he tried to pretend it didn't matter, the more it did. He found himself analyzing the curve of her collarbone, the weight of her silence, the deliberate way she moved through the room without asking permission. Not because she needed dominance, but because she already owned it. She didn't flirt. She didn't lean in or play coy. She just existed in a space that pulled him in like gravity. Your pupils dilated again, she said without looking up from the hollow panel she was scanning. That's the 4th time today. I'm reading, not reacting, he muttered. You're reacting while reading. It's inefficient. Julius tried to laugh it off, but she turned to face him, slowly, directly, as if the universe itself had paused to listen. You're not weak, Julius, but you are chemically compromised. You're saying I'm attracted to you. I'm saying, she replied, stepping forward. Your biology is, your consciousness is still undecided. He swallowed hard. This wasn't flirting. This was analysis with sharp edges. She tapped the side of her neck. A faint glow pulsed beneath her skin, blue and rhythmic. We emit low-frequency hormonal signals, she said. Unconscious. We cannot control them. Our bodies communicate before our minds can. And what is your body saying now? She tilted her head. It's listening. That answer terrified him more than any confirmation of attraction ever could. Julius turned away, trying to focus on the display screen in front of him. It showed data streams, planetary alignments, trade routes, Virilian linguistics, none of it useful right now, because all he could feel was her presence. Behind him, quiet, patient, observing, not watching, observing. There's a difference. You're resisting instinct, she said behind him. That is uniquely human. He turned slowly. You're not affected at all? Of course I'm affected, she replied calmly. Just not in the same way. You mistake stillness for immunity. Olevera stepped closer, closing the space between them again. Not touching. Never touching. You think attraction is about appearance, she said. But it's about disruption. You find me disruptive. And you like that? I find it useful. Julius could feel the weight of her eyes scanning him, but not undressing him, unraveling him, thread by thread. It's not just sexual, he said suddenly, almost defensively. No, she agreed. It's biological alignment, emotional mimicry, shared vulnerability. You define it with words like chemistry or tension. We call it cognitive collision. And what happens when the collision becomes fusion? Olevera's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, like pressure dropping just before a storm. Then we stop observing, she said, and we begin changing. Silence. A thick, electric silence that neither of them tried to break. Because somewhere between the algorithms of evolution and the chaos of emotion, two species were folding into each other. Not physically, not yet, but in a place far deeper. Inside the logic. Inside the instinct. Inside that dangerous middle ground where curiosity becomes obsession. Do you want it to stop? He asked. No, she answered. I want to know how far it can go. Julius wasn't sure if that terrified him or thrilled him. Maybe both. Maybe that was the point. This wasn't romance. This wasn't lust. This was the science of attraction. And the experiment had only just begun. First, it was silent. No orders. No objections. Just long, watching stares from the human observers and cool, unreadable glances from Olevera's kind. But nothing goes unnoticed forever, not on Earth. And certainly not in the presence of something that threatens order. Their closeness had drawn attention. Julius could feel it. The way the station crew avoided eye contact. How the daily reports were shortened. How the security drones suddenly shifted routes whenever he and Olevera walked the same hallway. And worst of all, the tone of the new orders from command. Maintain diplomatic distance. Limit non-essential contact. Emotional contamination will not be tolerated. Words wrapped in protocol, but soaked in fear. Julius read the message 3 times before deleting it. As if erasing the file might erase the feeling that came with it, guilt. Not because he had done something wrong, but because part of him no longer cared if he did. Olevera, however, didn't pretend. "They're afraid of me," she said calmly. "No," he replied. "They're afraid of me. Because of you." She raised an eyebrow. "Because you're not resisting as hard as you should." He didn't answer. She already knew the truth. They stood in the observation chamber, above the Earth's atmosphere. Glass walls showing the planet spinning in soft blue silence. Below them, nations still debated policy and power. But up here, something far older was being questioned. The instinct to choose between connection and survival. "I've been summoned," she said. "Verilion Central has reviewed our proximity. They believe I've been compromised." "Compromised how?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "They believe I've begun to care." The words didn't land like confession. They landed like war drums. Julius stepped back, shaken by their simplicity. In his world, care was currency. In hers, it was contamination. "They want me to recalibrate," she continued. "Return to mental neutrality. End contact." "You're not going to, are you?" Silence. Then, "I don't know if I can." It wasn't defiance in her voice. It was something far more dangerous, hesitation. And that meant everything. The Verilians didn't tolerate deviation. Not because they were cruel, but because they were precise. Emotion was chaos. It created unpredictable variables. Attachment blurred objectives. And now, Olevera was blurred. "You're being watched," she said. "Not just by them. By yours too. I know. And yet you keep choosing to be alone with me." He nodded. "Why?" He didn't have the words. Not clear ones. Only the heaviness in his chest and the flicker of defiance he felt every time she stepped into the room. "Because every time I'm not near you," he said, "everything else feels shallow." She didn't smile, but something inside her cracked. Just slightly. "I don't want to fracture your world," she said. "You already have." Another silence. But this time it wasn't tense. It was shared. Then the door opened. 2 human envoys entered. Cold-faced, clipped speech. "Julius, you're being reassigned." "What?" "Effective immediately. Orders from top-tier command. Another liaison will handle further Verilion integration." He didn't move. "You're removing me from her?" "This is not personal. It's strategic." He looked at Olevera. Her gaze was locked on the envoys, still but not passive. Calculating. Absorbing. When the envoys turned and exited, Julius felt like something vital was being pulled out of his chest. Slowly, surgically. He turned to her. "Say something." "I am," she said. "You're not." "I am, Julius. In every second I haven't left this room. In every glance I've chosen not to give them. In every pause before I follow orders." She stepped closer. "In my culture, silence isn't surrender. It's resistance." He felt his throat tighten. "Then what now?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But this is the moment your species always faces. When the heart knows something the laws haven't caught up to." And somewhere, deep within both civilizations, alarms began to blink. Not the kind that warned of war, but the kind that warned of something worse. A forbidden understanding. The door closed behind the envoys with a hiss, but the silence it left behind felt far louder. Julius stood still, shoulders rigid, every breath pressed against the weight of things unspoken. Orders, distance, protocols, boundaries, all of them now felt like glass walls closing in, visible, brittle, and too thin to stop what was building. Across the room, Olevera hadn't moved. She stood exactly where she had been, a violet silhouette against the glowing blue curve of Earth beyond the glass. Her posture was calm, but her energy pulsed differently now. Not calculated, not curious. It radiated in slow waves, like heat from a dying star refusing to go out quietly. "You didn't argue," Julius finally said, voice tight. "You didn't stop them." Olevera turned slowly, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim chamber. "Because I knew they wouldn't matter the moment they left." That answer cut deeper than anger. It was quiet rebellion, not against them but against herself. For the first time since she arrived, she looked conflicted, and that scared him more than anything. He walked toward her slowly, not as a soldier, not as a representative of Earth, but as a man unraveling, thread by thread. "I don't know what this is," he said. "I don't even know if this is real." "It's real enough to be punished," she replied softly. He stopped a meter from her, standing in the strange warmth of her presence. Not touching, not speaking, just breathing. Everything in his mind screamed to pull away. Every warning, every rule, every reason. And yet, Olevera stepped forward, erasing the final inch between them. Close enough that the fabric of her clothing brushed his chest with the faintest pressure. Still no contact. Still no violation of command. But now there was no space left for retreat. "You've been assigned new duties," she said. "I don't care. You should." "I've already crossed the line," he whispered, her head tilted. Not mockingly, not coldly, with wonder. "That's the difference between us," she said. "Your kind waits for lines to break before you act. Mine draws new ones every time we feel." She lifted her hand halfway, not reaching for him, but simply raising it, hovering in the electric air between them. "If I touch you," she said, "I won't be able to take it back. It will be recorded. It will be war." Julius looked at her hand, then her eyes. "I'm not asking you to touch me." She lowered her hand an inch. "Then what are you asking?" "I'm asking," he said, voice trembling with sincerity. "What happens to a species that builds walls around what it truly wants, and then meets one that refuses to obey those walls?" Olevera said nothing for several seconds. The pause felt eternal, sacred. Then she spoke, not to seduce, not to dominate, but to surrender something ancient. "I don't know what happens," she said, "because you're the first human who made me want to find out." And with that, everything shifted. Not with a kiss, not with contact, but with understanding. They didn't need to touch. Their thoughts had already done it. Words had carved space. Silence had held it open. Now intention filled it, raw, unfiltered, irreversible. Julius closed his eyes, and so did she. In that moment they were no longer human and alien, no longer liaison and guest, no longer Julius and Olevera. They were simply two beings, standing on the edge of something no treaty, no command, and no species had ever dared name. It wasn't desire. It wasn't diplomacy. It was collision. When their foreheads finally touched, gently, without force, without urgency, it felt louder than any explosion. A Virelian gesture, ancient, reserved for only one moment in their existence. Bonding of intent, not physical, not erotic, but eternal. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, "We cannot go back from this." Julius whispered back, "Then don't." Outside the chamber, alarms were blinking. Surveillance systems had logged proximity violations. Encrypted alerts were already pulsing through both human and Virelian networks. But inside, time had stopped. They had crossed the line. And whatever followed, punishment, exile, or peace, would be born from this one impossible moment. Not of weakness, but of will. After the touch, that quiet, shared stillness where two foreheads met in a gesture older than memory, the world did not explode. Simply changed. Julius didn't sleep that night. He wandered the empty corridors of the observation deck, replaying her words in his mind. "We cannot go back from this." But he didn't want to. Something inside him had settled. Not calmed, but aligned. His thoughts were no longer cluttered with resistance, denial, or guilt. They were clear, quiet, focused. He didn't crave her body. He craved her understanding. Across the station, in a sealed Virilian chamber untouched by Earth's surveillance, Olevera stood alone, eyes closed, arms crossed over her chest. She wasn't meditating. She was remembering. The moment their thoughts brushed, she had felt something unprecedented, emotional recognition. A clarity of pattern. No data model could explain it. No chemical override could suppress it. What she felt with Julius wasn't weakness. It was a signal, a mutual sync. In her culture, such a bond was meant to be impossible with another species. Connection required shared neurology. But something about him defied that assumption. He didn't match her mind. He mirrored her soul. The next morning, without orders, without permission, Julius returned to the chamber. She was already waiting. No words were exchanged. They sat facing each other. Not close, not touching. Just present. "What are you feeling?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, "Something I don't have a word for." "That's how I know it's real," he replied. This time she smiled, the first time since arriving on Earth. It was subtle, brief, but it wasn't tactical. It was human. Their conversations became longer. Not about systems, politics, or treaties, but about language, memory, fear, and doubt. She asked him why humans told stories. He asked her how her species handled grief. She described the Virilian mourning ritual, how they folded memories into color-coded light and released them into orbit, trusting the universe to carry their pain. He told her about his mother, about the smell of her garden, about the last time he heard her laugh. Olevera listened like she was absorbing a new frequency of life. Julius spoke like he was remembering how to feel without shame. Their connection deepened not through seduction but exposure. Not in darkness, but in shared light. Meanwhile, the outside world was catching up. Command noticed the patterns. Julius' behavioral logs were erratic. Emotional spikes, deviation from script. He was flagged for psychological review. Virilian Central sent encrypted pulses, orders for Olevera to withdraw, to return to alignment. They called her condition cross-emotive drift. She didn't respond, not because she didn't care, but because she did. Inside the station, the shift was no longer subtle. Technicians whispered about Julius. Guards altered patrols. Scientists avoided Olevera's gaze. She had become a symbol of instability, of violation, and of something else. Possibility, because those who watched closely saw it. The way she moved slower now, not with calculation but with presence. The way Julius walked differently, less stiff, more certain. The way their interactions no longer felt like experiments, but like evolution. One night, standing at the edge of the rotating Earth, Julius asked her, "Do you think this ends well?" She didn't hesitate. "No." "Then why keep going?" She looked at him, eyes clear. "Because endings aren't always failures." He nodded, slowly. "Then what is this?" She stepped forward, gently placing her hand on his chest. Not in desire, not in seduction, but in reverence. "This," she whispered, "is what happens when two species stop asking who's in control and start asking what's possible." In that moment, Julius didn't feel human, and she didn't feel alien. They felt like an answer the universe had waited too long to hear. Outside the glass, Earth spun on, still full of borders, rules, and walls. But inside that chamber, two beings had stopped orbiting around fear, and had started moving toward something new. Not perfect, not safe, but real. The confusion was gone. Only connection remained. They didn't announce the trial. They didn't need to. The moment the Virilian Council and Earth Command synchronized their communications, the truth became clear. Julius and Olevera were no longer individuals. They had become a problem, a symbol, a threat to everything both sides had spent decades preserving. Boundaries, distance, control. And now, that symbol was being examined under lights too bright for nuance. The chamber they sat in was cold, metallic, and deliberately silent. It wasn't a courtroom, not officially, but it echoed like one. The air was tight, the watchers invisible. Decisions were already made. They were here to justify them. Lieutenant Julius Cross. A voice rang from overhead, synthetic and stripped of emotion. Your actions have violated Article 7 of the Human Virilian Accord, Emotional Contamination Protocol. He didn't flinch. Next, the voice turned. Olevera 1A, biological envoy of the Virilian Consensus. You have deviated from neutrality. Your mind shows signs of empathetic alignment. You are considered altered. She didn't blink. They both knew this wasn't about laws. It was about fear. Fear of what they had become, together. That night, before separation orders were enforced, they were given one final conversation. A farewell dressed as courtesy. They sat on opposite sides of a transparent wall, neither of them moving. Time had shrunk around them. There was nothing left to defend. Only one thing left to decide. What will they do to you? Julius asked. They'll try to reset me, she said softly. Scrub emotion. Reclaim control. And you? I'll let them try. He stared at her, at the face he now knew better than his own reflection. Then this is it? No, she replied. This is the part where most species give up. But we're not most species, are we? Julius placed his palm against the glass. She mirrored him on the other side. They couldn't touch. But they didn't need to. What they had created between them didn't exist in muscle or skin. It lived in choice. When the order came to remove Julius from the station, something strange happened. Every system glitched briefly. Not a total failure. Just enough static, enough delay that human tech support had to slow down. Enough that surveillance lost visual on the chamber for 47 seconds. Enough time to decide. Inside the chamber, Olevera stood. Her eyes, once soft, now burned with conviction. I am no longer under Virilian authority, she said. Julius blinked. What? I've altered my own neural encoding. I've broken protocol. You did that for me? No, she said. I did that for us. He stepped forward. She placed a small device in his hand, barely the size of a coin. Alien metal, pulsing gently. What is this? A doorway. To where? Anywhere but here. Behind them, alarms were beginning to pulse again. They didn't have long. Julius looked at her. Are you sure? No, she said. But I've never wanted anything more. Together, they activated the device. The chamber folded in on itself, not with violence, but with grace. Light collapsed, matter bent, and they vanished from Earth's most secure orbiting station without a trace. They weren't found, because they didn't want to be. Rumors spread. Some said the humans buried the incident. Others said the Virilians erased her completely. Some believed Julius defected. Others whispered that Olevera had never existed. But somewhere, deep in the uncharted layers of space, beyond the trade routes, beyond the colonies, there was movement. A human ship powered by alien tech. Two beings on board, rewriting what love meant across species, time, and law. They didn't call it rebellion. They called it beginning again. In the end, the story wasn't about what was between her legs. It was about what rose between their minds. Understanding, defiance, and a connection too powerful for protocol. Julius once said, I don't know if I want to protect you or surrender to you. He didn't have to choose. He did both, and she let him.